Thank you, Stacy, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm Alan Najar with Smith and Howard. I'm honored to serve as your board chairman this year. And on behalf of your board of directors and your excellent staff, I'd like to welcome you to the August Chairman Circle exclusive event without lunch. So soon we'll have an event with lunch, but this will have to do until we get there. Your Chairman Circle last year grew to be over 100 members and represents many fine businesses and organizations that make North Fulton the special place that it is. And you as Chairman's Club members, your financial support makes all the difference in the financial health of your chamber, which our recent audit examination showed to be better than excellent. So your board, your staff, and I thank you again, and we appreciate your investment in keeping your chamber a very relevant and essential part of the business community in North Fulton. And again, thanks for being here today and screen sharing with us. It'll have to do until the social distancing rules relax. So I know each of you are busy and you could be spending your time doing other necessary things today in your personal and your professional life, but we appreciate you sharing an hour with us to hear some good information from some experts on some pretty relevant topics. On the Zoom call, everybody's been muted upon entry, so please keep your microphone on mute so we can avoid any unnecessary background noise during the presentation. If you have questions for our presenters, use the chat feature and Stacy will field those questions at the end of the presentation. Our sponsor for today is HLB Gross Collins. HLB Gross Collins is one of Atlanta's best known CPA firms and consulting firms. They have over 50 years of business in our community, and they work very hard to help businesses and individuals increase their profitability. Their industry specialists provide unique insights and expertise to the industries that they serve. And Gross Collins recognizes that the need of clients in one industry are vastly different from the other. And in order to adhere to their mission, they are very dedicated to providing targeted expertise through their client service principle approach. The businesses that they serve benefit from an in-depth knowledge of the industry, specific challenges and opportunities they face locally, nationally, and globally. I'd like to welcome our Chairman's Club member, Laura Matajeski, and thank you for sponsoring our program today. Laura, would you like to say a few words on behalf of HLB Gross Collins?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Alan. It's a pleasure to see everybody today. As I think Alan pointed out, we're still kind of in a world of virtual, but I'm so happy to see so many members tuning in today. There's such an important topic that Cressa is going to be presenting on today. To share just briefly about myself, I am a principal at HLB Gross Collins. I am very fortunate to lead the manufacturing, distribution, and supply chain practice, and also have extensive expertise in the ERISA plans world. HLB, as Alan mentioned, has been around for over 50 years, and we are just so proud to be a part of the Greater North Fulton Chamber of Commerce and appreciate all of the relationships and support that we have gained from the Chairman's Circle over the years, working with Callie, Stacy, and the rest of the team there. So we truly appreciate the honor today and look forward to hearing what Cressa has to share, and happy to support such a great organization and opportunity.
Thank you very much, Laura. We appreciate your support of our chamber and the Chairman's Circle in particular. So next, I'd like to introduce Cressa, our keynote presenter for today. Cressa is an international commercial real estate firm representing tenants and providing real estate services, including facilities management, workforce and location planning, portfolio and lease administration, and all the things around sublease opportunities. Our fellow Chairman's Club Circle member, many of you know Danny Vandermeeten. Danny, we're looking forward to hearing from you and your associates on some current real estate trends. So thank you for being with us today. And Danny, I'll let you introduce your team from Cressa.
Thank you so much, Alan. I appreciate that. And thank you too, Laura, for sponsoring this event. This is really cool to do. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Danny. I've been involved with the chamber directly for the last 3 years or so, but before this year, we had not been Chairman Circle members. And John Herbert, I'm glad you joined, because at the beginning of this year, I called John and I said, hey, we're finally joining the Chairman Circle. I'm really excited about it. And John's like, heck yeah, you are the first members to join this decade. And that was in January. And what a decade this is shaping up to be. My gosh, it's been a fun ride. But thank you everybody for letting us speak today. A little bit about our firm. Alan did a great job describing who we are and detailing what we do. And the best way that I could probably, in a nutshell, describe what we do is we're a real estate firm that is the world's largest firm dedicated to focusing on occupiers of real estate. And what that means in our world is there's a lot of companies that do a lot with real estate. There's a lot of companies that are built to service landlords and whose services are built to help those landlords. And we think of ourselves as a company built for companies. And that's important to know because everything that we'll touch on today is from that perspective. And so without going too much more into detail, I'll introduce my team. Marcus Hanlon will get to speaking about the return to office and what companies are doing right now to return and physically use their space and everything that goes into planning that. Jason Jones will end our details today and talk about remote advisory services, which are some of the more far-ranging plans that have to do with how do you strategize and evaluate the benefits of remote working and implement and integrate it into our operations. But first up is Brooks Morris. He's a senior VP with Cressa here in Atlanta. And what he'll talk about is the macro view of what's happening in real estate as a result of COVID, and even get into details of what's happening here locally. So Brooks, take it away.
Thank you, Danny. And thank you to everybody that's part of the Chairman's Circle. We're excited as a company to be involved now. We probably should have done it a long time ago. And Laura, specifically, thank you for the invite and allowing us to get together and speak on this topic. I think, Jason, you're going to share the screen and, no pun intended, pilot this.
That's right. Okay, you should be able to see the screen now.
Yep. Can everybody see?
Yep, good.
All right, go to the next slide. So I think most of us entered into this, I guess, remote work or new world around March 12th. And that was definitely, the initial shock. I think it was interesting for me to find out that sitting on the couch and streaming Netflix all day was an honorable thing to do. But after we all kind of got our heads around that initial shock, most companies, including ours, went into cash preservation and trying to figure out, what was going to happen to revenues and what action needed to be taken immediately with costs and expenses. And we went right from cash preservation, as you all know, I'm sure many of you on the phone or on this call had to dig in and figure out the PPP and SBA loan situation, whether you received that or not. I'm sure it was part of everybody's conversation. And from there, we went into, for us, Cressa, after that, and kind of sort of different during that, but certainly after that, and after we got through that, our clients nationally, we started to dig in all over the country with conversations around rent deferment. What were the options with rent deferment? What were landlords willing to do? We had some successful outcomes with that, and we also had a lot of difficult conversations and roadblocks with landlords through those conversations. And then after rent deferment, we've transitioned into the strategy around remote work and return to work, and we're really right now in the beginning stages of those strategies and building those plans out, and how that's going to impact your overall short-term and long-term leasing strategy for real estate. Next slide, Jason. So, this is a picture of the office market right now as we sit today. I think, maybe a better picture, it would be this good-looking man in a business suit in front of our building sitting on his hands. There's not a lot going on in the office market. There's a lot of activity with conversations. But as far as transactions are concerned, in our mind, rightfully so, most companies are looking at basically kicking the can down the road, trying not to make any decisions today while they get their hands around short-term and long-term. What does it look like remote for their operation, and what does it look like for their office needs? And we've got to get past the uncertainty with COVID. Next slide. So I think it's important to note right now kind of where we sit. Real estate's really moves very slowly. And I think it's important to understand where we sit today, even as we're, 4 months into this pandemic. We're finished with 2 quarters in 2020, and 95% of tenants are still paying rent. Unemployment during that period of time from May to June went from 14.3% to 11.1%. So we've seen some improvement in the economy, not a lot. As far as that's concerned, we're really cautious about the last 2 quarters as PPP money runs out. If the economy doesn't pick up enough steam, it's going to be interesting to see what happens September through the end of the year with how many tenants continue to pay rent. Another key data point, really our only view into the market right now and what is probably going to end up happening, the lead indicator, is what's happening in the sublease market. And in Atlanta, we gained an additional 519,000 square feet of sublease space during the pandemic so far. And I have a couple of slides towards the end of this to touch on that. And that really is our indicator to say that there's probably going to be somewhat of a correction in office space, whether that's a 5% correction or 15% yet to be seen. But it's an important data point. And we should also note that there's been 6.3 million square feet of office that is under construction in Atlanta today. So that's quite a bit coming online. All right, thank you, Jason. You can go ahead and populate all of those.
Oops.
Go back 1 slide. I don't know what that's, okay. So 3.6 million square feet of space has been delivered over the last 12 months in our market, Metro Atlanta. There's been 2.2 million square feet of absorption. The vacancy rate is at 11.9%, and that is still on the lower end of our historical average. And rental rates have actually increased this year so far, or for the last 12 months, 2.8%. Next slide. This is a slide that's hard to see, so I'll try to walk you through it relatively quickly. The top left-hand slide, what's important to note is those orange bars. That's from 2014, the first half of that slide, through 2019. Those orange bars represent net absorption. The blue bars represent net deliveries. So you can see after we came out of the recession, capital was scarce. Developers were scared. Banks did not want to loan money for office development. So you see that the result was the accelerated absorption, and we just did not have any new buildings coming to market. The ultimate impact has been seeing what we've experienced the last couple of years, which has impacted a rental rate that we've never seen to this point in Atlanta. And the top of the market was Ponce City Market just a year ago, which got to be over $60 a square foot. So you see the forecast, and what's being forecasted is you see the blue bars now, net deliveries that are coming, and the orange bars that are as far as expected absorption and how that's going to impact vacancy. Vacancy, this is CoStar, which is, from a data standpoint, has the most in the market. They expect 2021 through 2022 in Atlanta to kind of peak around 13% vacancy, and then after 2020 and into 2023, that vacancy start to improve and come down. Next slide, Jason. Market rents per square foot for office. We've had quite a run here with rental rates in Atlanta. You've got our 4- and 5-star offices, just the rental rate, not counting or overall market, getting above and $36 a square foot. And the top of the market for our Class A buildings and 5-star buildings, all of them are $40 plus a square foot in rent. Next slide, Jason. All right, so this is what's happening across our market with office development. Currently, 55 properties are under construction. That represents close to 6.5 million square feet. The percent of inventory, so that's just 2% of our total inventory. So I think that's important to note. It's not historically, that's still on the lower end of Atlanta's development. And it's also important to note that all of that construction, 58.2% of it's already spoken for. It's already pre-leased. So there's not a lot of speculation. So landlords in the market still feel relatively confident because of that. Next slide, Jason. Industrial market. Story of just two different tales here. You see the money raining. Industrial market is, it had a bit of a slowdown in March, but it has caught on fire again. And I'll go through the slides, but it's a very healthy market and there's a lot of activity right now. So after the slowdown, like I said, leasing volume has surged over the past few months. And currently right now, 6.2 vacancy rate as of Q2, and that's actually improved as we gotten into Q3. So in the industrial market, there is, over the last 12 months, there's been 16 million square feet of space delivered to the market. There's been 12 million square feet of absorption, which has taken us to now a 5.9% vacancy rate. And rental rates have continued to escalate even during COVID. If you'll populate that last box, 12-month rental rate growth has been a healthy 6.2%. Again, another note, we're still well below. We're still a very good value play nationally compared to other markets. Again, similar slides to before. Looking at office, this is now industrial. You can see that the projection, similar story on the upper left-hand side compared to office, with lots of absorption over 2014 to 2019, with not a lot of deliveries, a little healthier delivery of new space in the industrial market over that time period. But as you can see, that's driven overall vacancy down to historical lows. And you can see the projection. The expectation is that we won't get above 8% vacancy even into 2024. You'll see here the rental rates, not only what's happened, but the forecast. You got flex space that is now above close to $12 a square foot, which, 8 years ago, there was Class C office buildings that were around that rate. And you see our overall Atlanta now, what used to be in 2014 close to $4 a square foot, we're now approaching $7 a square foot. The construction activity in the industrial market, 77 properties in Metro Atlanta that's under construction, which represents 24.8 million square feet. 3.7% of that represents 3.7% of the total inventory, and again, 42.8% of it's pre-leased. So not a lot of speculation. A lot of it's already spoken for. That's the retail market. So not a lot to say about the retail market. We all know anybody that's dealing with that. There's a lot going on. There's a lot that's going to change. Retail is going to survive, but there's parts of it that will look the same, parts of it that's going to look very different. And just so you all know, as a company, we represent office users and industrial users. We don't really dabble in retail. That's a different animal. Some of our banking clients will do bank branches and whatnot, but we don't get into restaurants and malls and such. So this is an important slide. This is really our only leading indicator on what's going on in the market, or what potentially could happen to landlords, as we expect in the office market for it to become a tenant-centric or a tenant-favored market. And sublease space historically, or I should say in 2010, at the worst after the recession, we approached 4.9 million square feet in sublease space. A healthy market is below 3 million square feet. And you can see over the last 2 quarters, you can see that last slide there, we are now over 4 million square feet, approaching 4.5 million square feet. And then you can see by submarket, Central Perimeter by far has the most sublease space available, well over 1 million square feet. And then North Fulton, Upper Buckhead, and Cumberland Galleria are all above sublease averages. I think it's important to note for all on the call that you should know your landlord, you should know your business, and what type of landlord you match up well with. So I won't get into depth on this. Maybe some questions can come up in Q&A. But as you can see, there are large variances of landlords, and you should know that each landlord has very different the very different motivations, and depending upon what your needs are, that would dictate who you match up well with. Jason, I will turn it over to you for some remote work strategy.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Well, this is going to go fast and furious, so everybody buckle your chin straps. It's really amazing. I mean, when the healthcare crisis, by the way, quickly, I'm Jason Jones. I'm a principal at Cressa, and I lead our service line on technology advisory services as well as remote advisory services. I've been with Cressa for 18 years now. So it really is amazing. When the healthcare crisis forced shelter in place and stay-at-home orders in mid-March, no one could have possibly known that an entirely new era in how and where companies work and collaborate began. Now, in its wake, there were a flurry of surveys that were conducted. On the top left, you see a survey from IFMA, which is the International Facilities Managers Association. And in it, they found 40% of the respondents said, we want to work at home 3 or more days a week. That was a 185% increase over pre-COVID levels. Now, at the same time, Gensler, a very well-known and a well-regarded architecture and design firm, did a similar survey where 70% said, no, we want to work in the office 3 or more days a week. So part of this is about who you ask and when you ask. But I think the important thing for leaders of companies is you need to ask your own employees. You need to understand what their feelings are about how well remote work is going for them, and whether or not, but to what degree they want to be in the office and for what purpose. Because it absolutely is changing, and the direction is clearly towards more remote work than there was before. And the key indicator of that is what's going to show up at the bottom of the screen, which is that back to the IFMA survey, 70% of leaders said that their teams are performing the same or even better than before the health crisis. And the reason that's so important is because the number one roadblock to remote work previously was the manager saying, how can I manage someone that I can't see? There was resistance against taking the risk on remote work, but that's changing because the health crisis forced people out of their comfort zones and created really this broader acceptance that we're seeing for remote work. However, we're starting to see some cracks in the foundation and some frayed edges out there. Now, as recently as July 24th and 25th, articles appeared in the Wall Street Journal describing the challenges that companies are now starting to experience as they spend more and more time operating remotely. Projects are taking longer, collaboration is harder, and training new workers is a struggle for some companies. Laszlo Bock, former HR chief at Google, said there's an emerging sense of executives saying, this is not going to be sustainable. Now, a follow-on article said companies are now learning new lessons after the initial shock. And it suggests we're still, like Brooks said, we're still at the earliest stages of the work from home revolution, as they say, and it could take years to get it right. And I think that the reason that it's going to take years to truly get it right is because there's a natural tension between finding the right balance between remote work and in office. And we feel it's important, if we're going to learn from this, we've got to name the tension and address it head on. So here we see just a few of the benefits of remote work on the left side. So on the one hand, there's been experience of increased productivity. The commute has gone to zero on the days no one goes in or you don't go into the office, which improves work-life balance. The ability to recruit and retain talent is affected. Now it's no longer geographic. Many employees want to work remotely. There's a reduced cost associated with this, particularly from a real estate perspective, if you don't need as much space. And there's this spirit of freedom people are experiencing, which comes from being able to work where they want and when they work. Now, on the other hand, managers can't see their employees. There's a danger of burnout, isolation, and disengagement. Is there really any substitute for working together and mentoring in person? And there's real estate risk, because if you take too much space or too little space, now you're either you can't accommodate your employees or you're spending money on space that you're not using. And then finally, even though there's this spirit of freedom, at what cost does it come? Are relational bonds weakened? And how is our culture affected? So as companies navigate this tension in finding the right balance, there's a central question that leaders are asking themselves. And we would suggest that you too ask yourself this question. And that is, quite simply, how do we find the right balance in order to take advantage of this new culture of acceptance for remote work so that we can minimize expenses and the threat to business continuity, but at the same time, maximize productivity, talent attraction and retention, and financial results. And note that those three areas to maximize align with the three key departments of any business: operations, human resources, and finance. And it's through that lens that we recommend companies need to look at their remote work program. But not everybody is asking this question. Instead, leaders seem to fall into one of three buckets. On the one hand, there are certain leaders who say, I'm not interested in remote work. I want everybody back at the office. At the other extreme, there are leaders who are saying, we want everybody out of the office. No more real estate, and we're going to take maximum advantage of this. But the majority of companies are really those in the middle that are working hard to figure out what's the right balance to make it work for our company. And this group of leaders, they're asking that question. How do we find it? So we believe that to answer that question about the right balance, you've got to start with what is the fundamental nature of the workplace, which it's both the same as it's always been, yet radically different at the same time. The workplace has always been built on key elements of talent, culture, technology, and then the physical space. And that's the change. That's what's exciting, is that it's no longer about just a single shared central office, but now it's about choosing from a number of locations, not just the home, but other remote locations. In fact, the workplace has been transformed into a network of flexible, convenient, and on-demand spaces that allow two things: freedom of movement, and actually it requires purposeful collaboration. Whether collaborating in person or through digital mediums, leaders must now be purposeful about the frequency and method of collaboration, and we call this Workplace 2.0. So the question becomes, how do we get there? How do I implement a holistic Workplace 2.0 strategy that finds the right balance between remote work and in office, but also reimagines the way that our workforce works and collaborates? The key is a thoughtful, methodical process so you can move forward in confidence that you're doing the right things, making the right decisions so that you can increase productivity, talent attraction and retention, and your financial results. And also do this before you make the long-term commitments to things like real estate, the design, the footprint, and the cost. So briefly, this roadmap that we recommend you go through will help you do that. And it's 5 straightforward steps. The first is build awareness. That's understanding the benefits and the challenges of remote and in office. Next would be discovery. That's building a team and going through a checklist of critical requirements for a successful program. Next is planning, which is where you analyze the gaps in your capabilities. So as you go through the critical requirements, you're going to see, well, we're doing okay here. We're not doing so great here. We could use some help there. And once you've gone through that, you'll create a plan and go through implementation. And we always recommend that you do a pilot plan or a test period for a revised or optimal strategy so that you can then move forward in the confidence to make those commitments to things like office space long term. And then finally is ongoing management. The hallmark of any successful program is measuring key indicators and then making appropriate adjustments as you go along. So final slide on this is we thought that it would be helpful to see some of the quantifiable benefits for some of what seemed to be subjective. And this is a real example of a company that we worked with. They had 500 employees. They decided they wanted to move a certain portion, about 25%, remote. And this was the financial results. So they saved $337,000 per year in real estate savings, and that was calculated at $150 per square foot per person. Excuse me, not 150, 150 square feet per person at $30 per square foot. Productivity increased by 20%, which produced labor savings of $500,000 per year, since they didn't need to hire as many employees. As they were expanding, they had a target for how many employees they would need to hire to accommodate their growth. Now that they're more productive, they didn't have to hire those employees, and obviously that results in savings. Employee turnover was reduced by 50%, which avoided hiring and training costs, $26,400 per year. And they reduced employee absenteeism through their remote work program, which saved about $72,000 per year. And then finally, employee personal costs were estimated to be about $4,000 per year due to reduced commuting costs, parking, food, and clothing, et cetera. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Marcus Hanlon to talk about return to office planning and best practices.
Hi there. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Brooke. Dan, you're doing a great job organizing this. I'm an architect with Cressa Workspace. We're a division of Cressa that specializes in the office environment. So, Jason, thank you.
Certainly.
Want to hit the slide, please?
Yep, sure.
So where we are is we're still in the short term of this event. We're looking at the middle term, obviously trying to get the long term, but the new normal is still on the horizon. We're still trying to discern what to design to and where we're headed. So through that, if you don't mind, Jason, through that, what we've been seeing on the return to work is how to re-enter the workspace, how to re-enter the offices in this new COVID environment. So the first thing we always have to look at are the people. Establish a team, get a group together to streamline your decision-making as we're putting together plans. Secondly, evaluate your space. Not every space needs modifications. We're not advocating redesigning, relayouting, buying new furniture, jumping ship of where you are. We're looking at how to do this with your existing systems and your existing furniture. Develop your guidelines. What are the best practices? What's the best practices for your group? What's your group going to follow? Those are all the questions that we're looking to work with you on. Getting your communications in order. The return to office is a whole new group of behaviors and expectations. So establishing those expectations early really helps calm and get the people situated that they understand the leadership of the office and the people in the planning stages have their best interests at heart. Once you're back at work, you also have to gather important feedback. So listening to your folks, talking with them, figuring out, is this strategy working? Do we need to adjust? Do we need to revamp some of the decisions that we're making? This is a very fluid process. Jason? So what we've developed for many situations is what we call the return to office plan, and it evaluates spaces. This space that's being shown is typical office floor plan. The dots represent occupied seats. The little red X's represent unoccupied seats. Occupy 50% of the office at a time. Maintain social distancing. So to show that, we show a circle around each dot that demonstrates that we can achieve social distancing through the work environment. And then we get into strategies of how do we circulate the space to minimize contact? Where's the best locations for sanitation? Hand washing stations would be your sinks, your break rooms, your bathrooms. Hand sanitation stations would be your meeting rooms, key elements as entry and exit points, stuff of that nature. And we can demonstrate these patterns through majority of office scenarios. And what we're developing is the guidebook on how to return. It's important for the employees to know the first day where they're sitting, reinforce social distancing, reinforce these new protocols and guidelines that were established by the initial teams. Take steps to elevate the environmental situations, find out if your HVAC is clean, make sure cleaning practices are adhered to, and reassure your team and show through demonstration of leadership that if something happens, this is how we're going to react. This is uniform for everybody. And it's always great to follow up with surveys, follow up with discussions. We've developed a simple entry survey. What type of re-entry are you looking for? 50%, 20%? How many people are you looking to occupy in that space? How many people are even interested in coming back? And those are the real things that we're evaluating. So the little graphs on the right-hand side is a little study that we did. People wanted to come back, but they wanted to come back maybe 2 or 3 days a week instead of full time, and work from home the optional days. But as we saw this happening after 12 months, it starts to tip a little bit, as Brooke was mentioning at the beginning. It's all about how this works, and it's about a balance. So the time in office, the lower slide, talks about are you in the office 30 to 70%, which are the yellow bars? Are you in the office 100%, which is the bottom bar? Or are you in the office less than 30%? And through that, we can further down the road, looking at the midterm and long-term projections, start to evaluate what are the real needs of an office. Thank you, Jason. And like we're talking, Brooke mentioned, know your landlord. Well, also understand how your landlord is handling your spaces. If you're in a large building and there's a lot of common area, find out and communicate what the practices are for your elevators, lobbies, restrooms, all your common spaces. Find out if there's increased HVAC occurring in your buildings. We're seeing many studies that increased HVAC has a huge benefit, whether it's through filtration and sanitization, it's getting fresh air into your spaces. Find out what the new cleaning protocols are. Is the building doing an enhanced cleaning? Are they going through wiping down all your surfaces? But then there's also the office side. There's a behavioral aspect that needs to be established or considered, and whether that's a deep cleaning prior to the people coming to work. That's not on the landlord, that's on your businesses. Getting signage posted so it's clearly visible what the new expectations are. Better hand washing, we're doing increased ventilation, all those fun things. Shared areas. Demonstrate how many people are allowed in a conference room, in a break room, on shared spaces. We've gone as far as removing all extra seats, and we've decommissioned our boardroom. And that's now a very large storage area. Through your groups that you establish someone just to keep an eye on your PPE. Make sure that PPE is stocked, that people know where it is, and that a person is managing the reordering of it so that it's not caught off guard. And again, it's always a response plan. What to do when there is an exposure. It's not if. Exposures happen, and it's to deal with it in a very professional, easy manner. And that's what we've had to do a few times here as well. So getting back to work, we see that the 12% want to work from home. About half people, 44%, say they never want to work from home. 18% say they want to work home a few days a week, but more people say they want to work home less. The office environment creates community, culture, there are resources, but we want to be flexible in these scenarios that it allows people to work from home. So in the short term, we're still in that very beginning phase, getting back to office. Many aren't ready for the investment in major changes, and we're not advocating major change unless the client's looking for it. Clients are looking for one size, not everything is a one size fits all. There is no one size fits all. Proper planning takes time, and it's really putting it down on paper, dealing with your folks, putting it in front of your teams to make sure that they understand the new expectations. In the midterm, we're looking at how do we work from home and work from the office? And that's more of that balance scenario. And how do we build that into an office plan, the psychology of comfort, along with the physical comfort levels that we're looking for? And those aren't just the environment we're sitting in. Finally, the long-term plan takes into account this new normal and starts to say, okay, how does the office better serve its people? How can we share spaces in a more efficient manner? Because more people are working from home and more people have that flexibility. And through that, this blended option becomes the new normal, becomes the savings that offices are looking for, and becomes the productivity increase that offices are expecting. And through that, I'll turn it back to, I think, Dan, for any wrap up or direction, or Brooke.
Yeah, I think I'm glad to take it from here. I think we're going to have some questions. We had a couple of questions in the chat. And if you have any other questions, be sure to drop them in there and we can get to those. Brooks, I think the first question is going to be for you. What is going on with cap rates?
Well, over the course of the last several years, they've been getting lower, and good credit has gotten down to 5.5%. We expect in the office market those to expand. Nobody's going to be able to tell you right now where that will end up. Industrial market, we expect the industrial market, as healthy as it is, that those cap rates are going to continue to stay low. I'll give you one example in talking to quite a few investment sales professionals in this market. For office specifically, there's been a moat in between buyers and sellers of about 10 to 15%. So I guess that's as recent as this month. So that'd probably give you the best idea. And it's a matter of when landlords are willing to start to give, and we're starting to see a little bit of that.
All right, thank you. I think the next question is probably for Jason. Someone had mentioned in the chat about some stress at the work from home system. Are we also working with our employees and talking with our employees about taking time off and dealing with the realities of COVID without the fear of job loss?
Yeah, that's a great question. And really, that speaks to engagement, employee engagement. There are some very important criteria for maintaining your culture, one of which is making employees feel valued. even when they're out of sight. And first, I would recommend that you find out who's experiencing this sort of potential burnout or disengagement by surveying them. We have a survey that we have created that we use with our clients. There's no charge, but it speaks to the more of the cultural aspects of remote work. It goes beyond the tactical and, you know, how often you want to work from home and where do you want to work and what's the experience been like, but it's more around how are your managers are engaging with you. Are you getting the instructions and the clear responsibilities and goals that are set for you? And I think that's the way to address that, is making employees feel valued, and that comes from communication, which really ultimately starts with leadership. And you've really got to lead well through these times, and also particularly when people are concerned about their jobs because of the potential downturn in the economy. But anytime you're working with remote employees, you've got to be purposeful about your communication and leadership.
All right, well, thank you. I really appreciate the Cressa team, and everything that you have discussed here today is so important right now, what's going on. Alan, would you like to wrap us up?
Sure. Thank you, Stacy. Again, to our friends at Cressa, Marcus, Brooks, Danny, and Jason, what a great presentation and very timely information. I'll take a point of privilege and call out, Jason, your wings of gold are still shining pretty bright. Your hand on the stick is good. You flew the meatball well and you stuck the landing. So congratulations. Learning the Navy, you can check with him later on what all that means, or I'll decode it for you after the session. The Cressa folks, we really appreciate your time today. And Laura, we can't thank you and HLB Gross Collins enough for sponsoring today. To those of you on the call, thank you for being here. We thank you for your time today. We thank you for your investment in the Chairman's Circle, which is a very instrumental, influential part of our chamber, and we value your partnership. And I would be remiss if I adjourned today without letting everybody know that most people like John Herbert and I, when we celebrate our birthday, we do it for the birthday only on that day. Well, Monday the 3rd was Callie's birthday, and she's celebrating it all week long. So if you haven't wished her happy birthday yet,
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Kelly.
Happy birthday.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. We are adjourned, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
See ya.